really honored to have with us um, what I would kind of refer to as one of the more kind, optimistic thinkers in the Bitcoin universe, and the intentional way that he has chosen to navigate the chaotic world that we're living in as the fiat system unravels and we exit a world of rules for a world of freedom. This is Jeff Booth, and he wrote the book, The Price of Tomorrow, which we reviewed recently on the podcast here. And Jeff, we're really honored to have you with us. And the question that I wanted to begin with was, um, you talked about love and belonging being superordinate to basically everything. And the experience of life being in depth tied to that, and how we are entering this time of chaos that is not due to Bitcoin upsetting the system. It's simply due to people experiencing freedom for the first time in 5,000 years of civilization. First freedom in markets, where we have Bitcoin as the first free market that's ever existed, but freedom in other aspects of life as well. And that the chaos ensues really from people wanting to have that tie to the system. They want to be told what to do. They want those rules. And I think you elucidate it so beautifully. So I guess I just kind of want to throw it to you and ask you, can you kind of walk us through how you came to this understanding and what you feel like the inserting of freedom into a unfree world does to humanity and consciousness as we try to navigate this wide open space that we've never seen before.
Just that.
Just
Just going,
the next question will be 3 words.
just go into that complex thing. So each of these frameworks, I would say, would be different frameworks. And they're each one of those frameworks is almost big enough to comprise an entire show, an entire life. Because these things that we're hearing, or some of these things, will, depending on where you are in your journey, will hit differently. They might be true, but it's your understanding of them that it really shapes it. So I like to I like to find the bottom of what I'm talking about. So what's true for sure, and then pose that as, if that's true, what else is what else could we see? What would we expect to see? And so you just gave a number of them, right? In the same, and when you asked the question, and let's start with the first one, the love and belonging. So as far as I can tell, that's one of those things that I kind of came up with, that said, I believe love and belonging is subordinate to everything else. That we act in a way to try to get love and belonging, and most times, because of that, we don't see the things we do to actually push it away. And so I use examples to be able to see that. I've used examples to say, if that's true in other people, then it must be true in me too. And so I try to find things that are first true, and then they would, if it's in all people, then it would have to be true in me, to be able to help me soften an edge and somewhere find me look deeper. So one of the examples I often give in love and belonging is kind of that victim analogy. And somebody trying, whether they had pain as a child, whether they encoded pain as a child, whatever happened, that somehow by being a victim, everybody raced to them and showed them exactly what they wanted. And then because that was hard, because they always acted that way, those same people move away and it's too hard to be around that person. And so that typical thing is then they would double down and create more drama to get everybody to come back. Um, and so you can see when I talk about that, you can see it in probably somebody you know, maybe you, if somebody's listening to this, but it's really hard to face, right? That it's me creating the world instead of somebody else creating the world to me. So in each of these things, and by the way, if you use that exact same victim analogy and you say the person, the person who wants to be a billionaire so much that that they lose their family, right? Because they're constantly working to try to make that it's all consuming, and they're telling themselves the whole time I'm doing it for my family. And then as the family pushes away, it feels like loss, and they move to what gives them the love and belonging. More people who tell them how great they are, right? Which is, and so you see this, and I just gave a couple examples, but what got me interested in it and got what wanted me going deeper in it is watching these examples of different people all over my life of different. I call it the sign that they had on their forehead that was pushing everything away that they wanted, that they were unaware of it. You can see people doing it in Bitcoin. You can see they're so consumed with Bitcoin and how tight they are in Bitcoin that they want to push away everyone else in their life, right? Which they can't understand. Why are these people not around me anymore? Right? They think it's everyone else. And so and 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 sometimes that comes from needing to show up more intelligence than someone, or needing to, and so it's everywhere. And it just is. And a different way of looking at it is we look at our own photo first, right? We look at our own photo in a group picture first. We're so consumed how we show up, who we are in our own movie, right? That it kind of shows that. And then the irony of what I just said, the irony is we're so consumed with our own movie, but then most of the time we're talking about other people. Why did they do what they're doing? Completely unaware of the actions that we do to push people away. So if it looks like that everywhere, in love and belonging, if love and belonging were superordinate to everything else, I would expect it to look like that everywhere. And then I would also have to face that anywhere in my life that I wasn't getting what I wanted would have to be me too. And that's how I found different things to be able to unlock, to be able to take me to a different level. And so some of those things are hard to find because you want to believe all the good things that people tell you about yourself. And as soon as something's negative, that can't be me. Everyone else says great things about me. So that other thing has to be someone else.
Yeah.
To go down, like, even, like, maybe below that bottom, that movie that we're generating for ourselves, or that consciousness that wants to put us at the center of a movie, do you think that that's an evolved human capacity that we have evolved to help us get along as a social species? Or is it fueled by an attention economy with the new forms of social media we have?
I think it's evolved. I think that in part, we're social creatures. We get more done. Even if you just said what the free market is, it's a divisional labor to get more done based on trust and based on belonging to a group, in group bias, out group bias. And so as we evolved, I suspect that there's a part of that gave a bias for people who cooperated, or people who and so our cooperation gave a bias to fitness, function, and survival that allowed that to happen, and we didn't see that it happened.
Yeah, and so there's this idea of evolutionary mismatch. We were reading a book by Dr. David Sampson called Our Tribal Future, and the idea of evolutionary mismatch is you evolve a trait in a certain environment, but then the environment changes and you still have that evolved trait and you're applying it in a new realm. So his example is like turtles, a type of sea turtle evolved to go out to the sea when they hatch out of their egg, according to the moonlight or the sunlight glinting on the sea. But now there's beach houses that have bright lights, and so the turtles go inland and die. Do you think that if this is an evolved capacity, is there some toxic dynamic in the current environment that is leading it to have a negative effect, whereas, as you noted, evolved to help us maybe cooperate, but is the current environment a mismatch from the environment in which we develop that capacity or trait?
And that's a huge question. The simple answer is yes, but it would have to be the simple answer tied to something totally different, right? That tied to when I say the natural state of the free market is deflation, and that means inside that system we should, if we were cooperating, it means all prices have to fall forever inside that system. But we've never lived in that system. We've lived in a zero-sum game, so that's different. But very connected to what you just said. So if we've always lived in a zero-sum game where we are easily manipulated, and if you could, if the science of consciousness and the science of how to understand how people think and make decisions were equally, you can now really understand and coordinate and control those people from that science, from that centralized thing. Then from that centralized entity, you would expect everything to constantly do that and prey upon your weaknesses. But you wouldn't see them because you would be making decisions within that water. Like does the fish know what water is? And so all of your thoughts would be inside of there. Remember I said the sign on the forehead, if this is how, then you would be so easy co-opted by that system, and you would think it was somebody else. It would set up a perfect environment to program you in service of a system that was controlling you. And all of your work inside of that system would be furthering the programming.
And this system, I don't know is this just the fiat money system? Is it crony capitalism? Or is this a more intentionally constructed system by marketers who want to sell us something? Or what is this system, I guess, broadly speaking?
So that's why I start with the natural state of the free market is deflation, right?
Yeah.
Because and what you just did and nodded your head, something's true. But what does that say? Like, so you have to say it hundreds of times to yourself, because it's not just knowing it. It's internalizing it and then acting within it. Right? Because if you know something, but all of your energy is in the other system, spending in the other system, then the system that we've never lived in that is true for sure. You would expect all of the other things, all of your time in the other system to be capturing you more. And so people nod their head. Like you've heard me say this on every podcast, every speech, and people do exactly what you're doing, nod their head. And then they ask, what price in US dollars? And then they yell at the existing system. And what about those people? What about those bankers? Those, the Rothschilds or all this? It has to look like that. Whether it's evil in disguise or not, it doesn't matter. It just is. But your actions within that system further. So the question isn't what would it look like? Who would they look like? You are they. Right? The power that comes to that system is from you. And until we make the decision, each of us make the decision to stop, to see it for what it is, instead of make it about those people, because every fight within that system strengthens it.
Yeah.
It's so radically simple. Like, it's so crazy simple. But it's why this is why it's so hard, because we've grown up, our parents grew up, their grandparents grew up over and over and over. We've never seen what it would be like to live in a global free market. We don't have pattern recognition for it. So, and remember, and that's why it's connected to that love and belonging. And we want to matter in that other system. If we can a
Yeah.
little bit more money and matter the more to the other, and because there's so much expert bias, uh, recency, but there's so many biases in our decisions that we're inside the system trying to matter more within a zero-sum game, and you can't matter more in a zero-sum game, right? Or from that system, you would look really popular to the people you had more money from that were trying to escape poverty, right? Or if you're Tucker Carlson or somebody else, if you're yelling at that system and telling people the reason why it looks like this, you gain tons of credibility, right? Because all of those people were looking for an out, you would still be in the system trapping all of your time and energy.
Fighting the system gives it the energy that it needs to persist, kind of in your own mind, and your own mind is forming the reality that you're living in. You talked about in the book, you talked about the visualization of folding the piece of paper 50 times in order for us to help understand the power of exponentials. In that, if I take a piece of paper and I fold it 50 times, it reaches nearly to the sun. And so the flip side of that, in the conversation with Daniela.io that I listened to, you gave the example, we talked about how you're not only the sum of what you've experienced, but also there were 2 parents and there were 4 grandparents and there were 8 great grandparents and so on. And so it's a deflationary collapse of experiences throughout generations into you that carries, I guess, both. We focus, I think, more on the trauma, but it also carries the victories and the optimism of those previous generations, all exponentially collapsed into one person. And so, to get back to the second half of my chapter-long question that I opened this with, was um, the freedom to. We are now experiencing freedom for the first time, and we're experiencing freedom in capital markets through Bitcoin. But there comes behind that, because of the deflationary abundance of technology routed through AI and Bitcoin and robotics and the sum of all the technology, that freedom expands not just from our capital experience, but also from our lived experience. And Grant had a great quote from Marx, I think. Do you have that? He wanted to, because we're curious about where do we go with this freedom? And, what does this post economy or post zero sum game world look like?
Yeah.
Unless
you want to react to that.
Answer that before you go to the question.
Yes. Yeah.
So what I recently described, where we are moving to, versus what I described in Love and Belonging, most people still measuring that from the existing system, they are not free. They don't have freedom. They might have more freedom because today they have more money than the next person, but they are in a system that is going to be a totalitarian control system. And they are if they're giving their energy to that system, they are not free. And until we're all free, nobody's really free, right? Because we've always lived in this control system, and it's quite likely that most people are going to get co-opted by it. Most Bitcoiners are going to sell back to a piece of paper. and it's going to centralize. That's going to centralize further. What I'm talking about is, and in some countries we don't see this because we've never seen it. We believed we were free in the U.S. or Canada, but that control system was a zero-sum game that had to come from the losses from somewhere else. And then it'd be three-letter agencies that would go in and put in the dictator to ensure that those people never rose up out of freedom. Because that's what funded us. We were at the top, they were at the bottom. I sat down with the writer John Perkins, who wrote Confessions of an Economic Hitman. I sat with him for 3 hours over dinner about a month ago. And he said that literally he went in, bags of money in one hand for the dictator and all their family and friends and cronies, gun in the other. Choose. That's what the world's look like. It's always looked like that because it had to look like that from a zero-sum game. When we're talking about freedom right now, when people think they have freedom of speech and everything else, because it came from somebody else losing theirs. If we don't operate in Bitcoin, if you don't operate in Bitcoin and develop privacy tech on top and spend your money in Bitcoin and advocate for that and building on top of it, that you will be captured. And it only matters how many people do that. We have never been free. And it's consolidating faster than people realize because the exponential trend that I talk about has to mean exponential manipulation, exponential centralization, exponential control at the same rate. And so right now you see people talking about privacy coins, right? And going into all this nonsense, talking about this nonsense because they don't know there is a protocol that they can be free on. So the vast majority of Bitcoiners are going to get captured.
And so freedom so far in this discussion is defined as freedom to transact and freedom of certain political rights like expression, maybe democratic involvement. Is your definition of freedom here the free market, which has not existed? Or what does freedom look like in its pure form right now, if there are pockets of it, or what will it look like if it is instantiated in the future?
So this is actually why, and I'm really glad, and keep pushing here, by the way, and let's just keep on pushing, because sometimes you'll say a word that is your idea of freedom, like democracy.
Yeah.
Right. How could your version of democracy work that you believe you live in if most of your money is stolen from an unnatural tax that you don't have a vote in? Because you don't have a vote in inflation, right? And remember, inflation isn't from zero. It's from the productivity rate of the world, which would be way negative. So most of the economic decisions which drive your life, you don't have a vote in. Most of the economic decisions that create the three-letter agencies, that create all the power that creates the centralization of media, technology, farming, agriculture, medical, all of that bullshit is stolen from you, concentrated into monopolies, that then you regurgitate into it and then say democracy. We've never lived in a true democracy. We don't have the word. We've never lived in true capitalism if the natural state of the free market has always been deflation, and we've never seen it. So, and I don't mean to be argumentative, but I want to really pinpoint why these words. You can't understand them because they have a meaning. That meaning for each of us is describing a different meaning that doesn't exist. make-believe.
Yes.
It's complete
Yeah.
make-believe. It's a zero-sum game that had to steal from somebody else. And if we made believe and we put our head in the sand that it was stealing from somebody else, we could just keep on rolling in that game. But it's never been the free market.
Yeah.
So now, if we're the free market, so what is the free market? What is the free market? That's probably a better way into this.
Yes.
The free market is the only way you could get paid more than others is by creating more value for them. Only possible way. And then when you do, you create margin that other people see your margin and they want to compete on your margin. They want to take your margin and compete more and give more value to others. So every single thing you do in the free market has to benefit all of society. And if you do something really special for all of society, you get paid more for a while until people do something more special than you. In that world, there couldn't be a monopoly. It's impossible. In that world, as you added more minds to try to compete to serve others, you have faster abundance. Not there's never going to be a problem. Just all problems create more opportunity to solve problems for society.
I guess my question though then is, if freedom in the free market is defined as that ability to contribute and then to be rewarded in relation to the value that other people find in your contribution, but brass tacks, what everybody cares about is belonging and love, won't some people get less belonging and love in the free market system if they don't have something to contribute that others find of value?
So that's why.
And
So now, okay. Now let's say you don't have a job. Right? And first, I'm just gonna qualify something. I believe every single human being has genius in them, and that genius doesn't have to be my genius. The mosaic of who we are all connected is the genius in each of us, that fractal showing up. But what if you didn't have a job and everyone else's work was making things more abundant for you, and you didn't need a job, and you were just getting wealthier? And when I say wealthier, I mean you could have $1, and that $1 would increase in value forever. And when I say $1 in this case, it wouldn't in a dollar, but let's say 100 satoshis, it'd increase in value forever. Then the genius that you were would find something, even if you were making 1 satoshi, right? But you wouldn't need to make more and more because your currency was being devalued. Your time would be increasing forever. Your value to society would be increasing forever, whether or not you contributed. You'd be benefiting from the global competition, trying to create value for you, as would every other person on the planet.
yeah,
So I think what I'm interpreting you saying is that love and belonging superordinate to all, and that with freedom, each individual will experience an opportunity to discover the mosaic of genius that exists within them and drive them to express that genius in a way that contributes to the love and belonging of the world.
Or serve society, or serve
Yeah.
society in whatever way they say. Because now to argue the opposite, right? Argue the system we're in. Wouldn't
Hate and
the
exclusion.
system we're in have to try to divide you from that love and belonging, to use that to be able to say that it's somebody else's fault, to be able to continue to control you? And wouldn't that system have to do that more and more and more as it had tried to agree to, because you weren't making decisions on a free market. You were making decisions on a manipulated market, and those in control of the decisions would and most people would be caught in it, not even know that they're contributing to it. And so it would have to be tied into our consciousness, because it's just based on a system that is ultimately based on theft.
Yeah.
And so, those would have to have to be so diametrically opposed, and you'd face a choice at some point, the cognitive dissonance of trying to mesh two different systems that couldn't be compatible together. The cognitive dissonance that you would face in trying to even what's happening. And by the way, and I love these conversations. I love what you're doing, because this would be really hard for every single person to win, because most of your decisions are made from the other system. They'd have to be, to catch yourself and realize and say, like, of course it looks like that from where I'm making most of the decisions. Now my choice is, do I move my time and energy to the new system, and how much of my time and energy?
Yeah, you talked in an interview about about checking yourself, using your framework to check yourself, and realizing that there was a point where you were in the Bitcoin world, but still spending most of your energy in the fiat world, and you made the active decision to move that. And it sounds like you are very well versed in the corruption model, in the taking, the hating, the exclusion, and very aware of that. And so what did it look like functionally for you to move yourself out of that fiat system? Was it just the mindset of I'm not a victim, or what does that look like to you when you moved all in on Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I'm going to caveat this. I try even today to spend as much possible energy in Bitcoin as I can, and spend in Bitcoin as much as I can. Still today, I bought a boat recently. Boat wouldn't take Bitcoin. The boat owner wouldn't take Bitcoin, so I bought in fiat. But I'm constantly thinking how to move more time and energy. And I get sometimes, but it doesn't matter to me what somebody else's perception of me is. And I understand, I empathize with their perception, because their perception is coming from their own reality, right? So I get sometimes, easy for you to make that choice because you've always had money. And so let's investigate that specific example. In my book in 2017, I round tripped my own company, went from $500 million of value, and I walked away with zero. Not only zero, I had sold our family house into that, and I couldn't pay rent at the end of the month. And so we were literally zero. And I came away from that experience realizing I had everything I could ever want at zero. I had still had my family, still had all my relationships, had my integrity. I had everything I could ever want at zero. And so it was easy to start again. But we started again like late 2017, right? And then started and built back and did very well. But so when I made the decision in 2021 to stop all of the boards, stop everything else I was on, and move into Bitcoin and create Ego Death, that decision looked like this with my wife. Still remember, you're building back, you should have. It said, we're not going to make anything for the next year, at least. We're going to, but I'm going to try to create Ego Death. And assuming it works, and we'll make money later on, but I have to move my time into the system. And so we're going to just put a box in, we're going to live on any savings that we've had, might go to zero again. But I have to do this. So, and I'm not looking for sympathy or I made the right decision for me. And I don't want to also say to anyone, they need to make the decision because I made the decision. Each person needs to make the decision in their own time, what it looks like. I couldn't live with the cognitive dissonance of knowing that I wasn't in unity with who I was. And I had, so that was more pain than any money I could make.
So there's going to be a certain subset of the population that regardless of whatever particular genius they have as like an aspect of their dignity or some universal aspect of them as humans, they're going to be able to contribute far less. For example, a person with like muscular dystrophy, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, they're born in a state where they're always going to be in a power wheelchair. They're always going to require immense amounts of technology that others provide to them to maintain their bodily function, to enable them to do things. Going to need personal care from other humans to bathe them, toilet them, things like that. And so for the critic of the free market system, they're going to say that that type of person is not going to get the love and belonging that they need. A person like Jeff Booth, who is able to create companies, can, but a person who is not able to, and in fact is very profoundly disabled, is going to require maintenance from others, whether in the form of pure charity or in the form of the state providing something. And so I guess how is that person on the free market if love and belonging is the ideal or superordinate state that justifies the system? How does it justify their position within that system?
So keep in mind, I didn't say love and belonging justifies the system. I said the free market, the natural state of the free market is deflation, right?
Okay.
That's true. How we show up, I've always showed up as love and belonging. And so if the natural state of the free market is deflation, and the opposite system is a credit-based system by which money is lent into existence with an interest rate, it means you built in an interest rate that must expand forever, right?
Yeah.
On money that didn't exist. So you're built in essentially theft to the protocol layer of humanity. So instead of asking how this would work if you had a system of honesty, where you had to provide more value to society, wouldn't you want to first explore what it would look like in a system where you created dependence from everywhere, created victims everywhere from a system that had to control you? So even the question itself is so crazy, and I'm sorry, but it's because it perceives that you've lived in a system that is honest. And what would that dishonest system have you believe about those other people or yourself that you couldn't have agency, you couldn't provide because the state had to look after you, right? And how could you be convinced from that? So it's a dishonest system. It comes into existence completely dishonest. And so I know who I am. And if I've created more wealth or more of this, then I am more likely to give back. Right. And instead of give back because I had a tax incentive to give back to bury my head in the sand that I'm at the top of a system of theft.
Yeah. I want to change direction real quick. You have said that Bitcoin eats all the other currencies, and I believe that as well. But there are a lot of people with very large platforms, even people like Michael Saylor, who have talked about the dollar being able to exist kind of side by side with Bitcoin. The rise of stable coins in the last few years becoming more and more prominent, which I like. When I think of stable coins, I just think of them as a shorter term way to steal money. It's like a momentary bond that takes away your opportunity instead of a time sensitive one. But can you, I guess, can you just sort of solidify that argument, which I do believe is true, but I want to hear it from you, that Bitcoin takes over all the currencies and kind of address stable coins as well, and if they have a role to play in that, or if they are just a blip in time where there is an extractive economy that's taking advantage?
Yeah. So Patriot Act is the opposite of the Patriot. Right. The Inflation Reduction Act is the opposite of the Inflation Reduction Act.
I see where you're going.
Stablecoin is opposite of a stablecoin.
Okay.
The stability comes from guaranteed losses against Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It should be called a guaranteed loss coin.
Yeah.
But branding will suck a whole bunch of people in. This will happen. All of these things at the highest level of the natural state of the free market is deflation. If we now have an ability to live in that energy completely and move our time into it, but in previous 5,000 years we've never lived in that, then you would expect people to get captured over and over and over again. And because it had to mean we were always captured. And you'd have to believe that this system kind of Bitcoin imposing a discipline would have to have all of these short-term actors, scams, nonsense. It would have to look like that. There's no possible way that it just magically, we're going to just give up. Because why would it look like that? Because we've always been the other system. And I would virtually say most Bitcoiners are still in the other system.
Yeah.
Right. And so it would have to look like this, and not, it might look like this.
Yeah.
Right. And then every single person would choose through their proof of work, right, which system that they wanted to participate in. And then a lot of those people, that's why I don't trust verify, slay your heroes. People should say about me too. Have you moved? Or which is like, have you been tapped on the shoulder and now you're telling a different story to society, right? One that captures. And so then that bar should be really high. I'm not saying attack everybody, because you don't need to. You just watch their actions. But you would expect this to be a really chaotic transition, because the chaos was us. Chaos was us understanding something different, that was imposing something different, that we had to make a choice, and not just one choice, more and more and more choices, right, to be able to do this. And each time we made that choice for the honest system, we would be abandoning the dishonest, and more people would be joining us. And then there'd be a lot of, over here in the negative, in the system that we've always lived in, there'd be this pull to, you got really rich, go back, right? And there's, or how do I aggregate more of this, more in fiat dollars, right? There'd be this pull. So now you've probably heard me say this hundreds of times about protocols are winner take all and technologies are winner take most. So the way people are looking at Bitcoin right now is they're looking at the first layer of a protocol. I'd say even Bitcoiners that aren't using Lightning or Liquid or Spark, or they're looking at first layer of the protocol, not as a medium of exchange. They're looking at it as a store of value. And that store of value in 16 years has still decentralized, secure energy backing it, is growing exponentially. And so it's never 10 minutes, new block, 10 minutes, new block. It's imposing a change in the world. What would it look like over here? Over here, it would look like, wow, a bunch of those Bitcoiners got rich early on. But this protocol it can't scale, right? So one of those Bitcoiners was Vitalik. And he tried to change the protocol. And the consensus mechanism saw through it. They saw through, if you changed it, it would centralize. So we're not going to change it. So what would he say to a world of people that were wanting to get rich from this world? He would say, I have a new scaling technology, that Bitcoin's old tech, that I'm going to scale. And it would just be a centralized blockchain that would be garbage. Right? Because why would you need a blockchain if you were going to centralize? You just use a database.
Yeah.
But because most people wouldn't see that, most people wouldn't see how protocols scale in layers. This chaotic world, and the entire monetary system was being broken. Even without Bitcoin, it was hitting the end of end of a system that was going to need to be reset or go to war and reset it, right? Even without Bitcoin, people would be stuck in chaos like crazy, and they would be looking to try to get out of it, and they would be totally susceptible to scams and from that other system. It would look like that, and also they'd never seen a protocol before. They saw the internet, but they thought the internet started in '89 instead of 1969. They didn't watch how protocols emerge. So other things you could garner from, if that was the case, you could say there would be a whole bunch of ideas. There'd be a whole bunch of things that Bitcoin didn't do right now, but would on different layers, that a bunch of those people would want right now. And they would try to change the first protocol layer. They would try to make changes. You would also expect 3-letter word agencies and everything else to infiltrate that, to try to make changes, to see. And the consensus mechanism and the people involved would constantly push back as new layers were built on top, providing more functionality that no one could see coming because they were trying to do something different. And so that's what's happening right now. That's why Lightning, Liquid, or Spark, all of that is kind of the language, interoperable language of now you're moving value, people to people, on top of a protocol that's decentralized and secure. Part of a protocol that's decentralized and secure. Yes, it provides a little bit more through Lightning nodes. It provides a little bit more of centralization on the second layer, or any of the, call it Spark or Liquid or anything else. But if those are sufficiently decentralized in a whole bunch of different applications, then you have decentralized security on the bottom layer, you have a payment medium of exchange on the second that can scale a long, long way. And what about privacy? Right, we need privacy and so that's what Fediment is. That's what the cashew is as well. But my personal choice, now I'm an investor, so caveat, I'm an investor in Fedi. The Fediment protocol is something that had to be there before such time that this entire system was compromised, the centralized system was compromised. So now you have, and some of the things that we even designed in there, it goes open source January 4th, but even before that, we had a poison pill that if anything happened to Fedi, it was immediately open sourced because you had to move it for a certain, and so the thinking through that in order to essentially build nodes at the next level. When I say nodes, I mean us, that couldn't be compromised in order to provide privacy tech to the entire world, that they could use this as a medium of exchange. It had to be there before the rest of the world centralized. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for that response. It's so much fun to watch you reason from the bottom back up, and the way that you reason, this would have to be the case if, and then you're able to arrive back to explain the system as it is, the labels that we use, and also the technologies that people propose, the reasons they propose them. So it's just, I can see why, and you're on so many podcasts, but watching you reason in public each time is just so valuable. So thank you for doing that.
Appreciate it. I've had to do it myself because when you're making investments, not just investments of money, but when you're making investments of your time, what's required here? And why are so many people going to be confused by the existing system, thinking that it's a token, right? Because they're going to rich on it. What would that look like too? And how would it end back in tears in the other system? You had to do this in the Fedi example. I don't know, for 3 years I've been on a weekly strategy call because that strategic effort to develop something that's so robust for humanity and has so many potential people wanting to try to kill it, or had to exist, and so you had to be really thoughtful in the way that that was designed.
And this is such a beautiful example of your philosophy in action because you're investing in a protocol that's going to go open source. So there's no IPO, there's no big cash out, there's no big sale. And so you you've been talking about how we have these words and we use these words as though we know what they mean, freedom and democracy, but we've never actually experienced them. And what I'm hearing is that perhaps we've never experienced the meaning of investment because what you're doing by investing in a protocol, it makes me think of like the chickens at the rotisserie chickens at Costco. It's the loss leader that they know that they're not going to make money on that, but it bolsters the value of their underlying product. And so would it be the case then that you look at investments now effectively as I'm not making money off the investment, but what I am doing is I am bolstering the system, the Bitcoin system, which therefore raises me up and raises everyone else in that system up. Because
So a little different, because we are looking to make money. If I was investing my own money, to have a different calculus. If I'm raising money from LPs and they know that the Bitcoin IRR is 45%, that's 45% against the existing system. So it's probably a lot higher than that, right? And they knew that they have a 45% IRR, then I would never take money from somebody unless I thought I had a chance to beat that IRR. And so what would beating that IRR look like? If you were making it, and by the way, the same is true for every single person on the planet right now. The IRR of Bitcoin is 45%. So if you made just a little number of sats per month and everything else is losing money, then you have an extraordinary IRR. It's more than 45%. Right? Because you're denominating Bitcoin and you're adding sats all the time. And so that free market is going to get, and I also believe unless you're, it can't just be all open source, because if it was all open source, where does the money come to fund open source?
Yeah.
It comes from people who've made money by extracting from the other system. And so if it looked like that, you could expect that that thing might get broken in time. It has to be the free market. It has to be the free market valuing. Now, this is the difference. People who create tons of value, that you could actually have long-term value if they continue to create value. You could actually make a ton of money if they continue to create value, but they don't have any moat. They don't have a moat that's caused by the existing fiat system or regulation or anything else. So that means let's use Fedi, for example. Let's say Fedi created so much value as an example. Now it's really early, but let's say they were charging people $100 a year, but you've got perfect privacy in your communications. So now you had a real bank. You could start your own real bank. Your communication, your money cannot be seen by anybody. And you could have millions of banks all over the world. You could have 20 yourself. You could charge other people for the service of actually having your bank. And Fedi, let's say they need $100 a year from you, and you made more from everybody else. Well, then you would expect, if that worked, you'd expect to have somebody else using their exact same technology to do it for $80 a year. You'd expect somebody else to do it for 60, 50, 40, 30 and prices fall to the marginal cost of production. So unless they're creating more and more value, tons of value for you, that you don't want to go somewhere else, then somebody else will beat them. That's how I look at this. And so I have no problem investing in free market, and I have no problem investing in somebody who's going to create more value forever for their users, because that's what it looks like.
And that's the key, is that you have to continue creating value. You can't just do it once, because if you do it once, it'll be undercut by somebody using the same tech.
Yeah, or if you do it in a way, and I think a lot of people are making this mistake because they're using fiat games to do this. A lot of Bitcoiners that we're going to make so much money here by essentially creating an extractive model here. It could never look like that on top of Bitcoin.
Yeah. And so this is a question we were kind of leading to earlier because it's the end point of your book, and it's something that really fascinates me and I find just beautiful. This end state, like we kind of, once we get to the point where deflation escapes inflation and we just lean back into it. I'll read a quote from your book that I really love. The fear of a future without those jobs and self-worth that they bring stops us from imagining a better world in which they might not even be required. And you say, consider this alternative. Allowing abundance without the jobs might actually open an entirely new enlightenment era where we have time to enjoy the benefits that technology brings. And I'm really curious about how you view that state of being, I guess, and how we're living at that point where we do allow the deflation of technology to occur. We allow abundance. It's not restrained by inflation. Um, what does society look like?
So, it's funny. This whole conversation, that's what the world looks like to me right now.
Yeah.
Like right,
I've heard you talk about this. Yeah.
right. And that's energy, because I know it's coming. And so when I say we create reality, I very much mean we create reality, but we can't see we create reality because of our ego in the way and this love and belonging and everything else. So we think it's somebody else doing it to us. And so by living in Bitcoin, by spending my time in Bitcoin and all the beauty and all of the people that are in it and doing it, I've still spent time with people who aren't in it yet, moving them along, but I know that they're going to move there too, right? But by spending my time in doing this, I'm not just, I'm a participant, I'm a node bending reality into the direction that I wanted to. And so, well, if a whole bunch of people didn't understand that and they were fighting me, why would I fight them?
Yeah.
Why, because my ability to create value in the free market comes from a whole bunch of people not understanding that. My ability to bend reality into a world where our consciousness rises
Yeah.
because as technology does the job of us, we benefit from the technology doing the job of us instead of that getting concentrated into somebody else. There's nobody to blame. It's just us. And so and you can make the decision, and you could live in that total energy yourself right now. And the more you do, the faster life gets better.
It's just so beautiful to hear you talk about this. You had mentioned speaking at a consciousness conference with, seers and Zen masters in the audience, and you said that there was like an aura, a green light, kind of surrounding you. I may have misheard, but
It was actually, it was a light that wasn't plugged in, right? And
okay,
and so my wife was watching it, but it turned green and it was pulsing behind me. I didn't know it was a light,
yeah,
but it wasn't. And it was, and so yeah, it was interesting to see that, and all of those people, everyone at that conference is now a Bitcoiner. Now they're early in their journey, but you could just, because they could connect to something that was always there, that before they had to go live in a cave and be in meditation or psychedelics all the time. And then when they came back to experience the real world, it didn't look like that.
yeah, yeah. And it may just be a trick of the light, but earlier when you were talking, I was, I'm looking at you here on the computer, and there was this green around your head, and it just brought me back to that, which gives the impression to me, of course, that you you do have a wonderful take on things, and you have this beautiful approach. And I wanted to ask you, it's been a while since you wrote The Price of Tomorrow. Um, are there things now, looking back, that you would have put in that you left out, or the things you put in that you would have taken out? And then where are we at in the folding of the paper? It's been 70, 80 years since the transistor was invented. And so, what is where are we at in the folding of the paper, and what would you change about The Price of Tomorrow, if anything?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that I would have. So from a functional thing, I would have explored more in energy. I would have explored more nuclear, specifically in energy. So that was one I should. In fact, again, this is what I'm going to use. If this looked like this, if this looked like this, you would expect that if the thing that they gave this system was a petrodollar was required, then you'd expect technologies to give abundant energy be gaslit.
Mhm.
And so, and then in the end, I'm actually glad I left it where I left it on Bitcoin. But my journey, and although I was a Bitcoiner, kind of especially in 2019 as I was writing the stuff, and I bought the first time in 2017, but I wasn't really Bitcoin. I think my journey to Bitcoin really just started then, and it's deepened more. But if I tried to put all of the second half into that book about where Bitcoin takes us, it just would have been too much for people. People needed to see the problem first, and then what a solution would look like, and then wait, I'm the solution. And that's why I've been so maybe vulnerable in showing my own path and in understanding, realizing that if I didn't know this and I went down this end of all of these, and I spent like a lot of hours, tens of thousands of hours on both systems trying to understand the first principles, not just that, but who we are, how we make decisions, tens of thousands of hours just there. And if I didn't know this and I was caught with my own hypocrisy, then it would be likely that lots of other people would get caught along the way too.
I definitely feel like I'm caught, and it's fun to see and really educational to see you talk about how this consciousness can be generated right now. It's very difficult for me to do that, and I want to work towards it because I think you're absolutely correct. And Lucas alluded to this. I wanted to read you a quote from Marx to see if the generation of consciousness. So Marx is a materialist. Consciousness is generated by material conditions. You seem to be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that we have the ability, the autonomy to generate consciousness right now, and use that to bring conditions into existence. So I'll read you this quote, and if you could just react to it, I guess. So I'd really love that. So Marx writes, "For as soon as the distribution of labor comes into being, each man has a particular exclusive sphere of activity which is forced upon him and from which he cannot escape. He is a hunter, a fisherman, a herdsman, or a critical critic, and must remain so if he does not want to lose his means of livelihood. While in communist society, where nobody has one exclusive sphere of activity, but each can become accomplished in any branch he wishes, society regulates the general production and thus makes it possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow, to hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner, just as I have a mind, without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic." So Marx is speaking of a universal abundance and the consciousness he thinks it's going to generate. I guess, what do you think about that?
So he comes to it from materialism, like you said. And by the way, this is the same thing in the consciousness seminar that they saw in my work. All of everything, all of materialism exists in our mind first. There is nothing it's just when you think of planets in the far out distance and being able to see those with telescopes today, or the math being able to measure those, where did the math or the telescopes come from? Came from your mind. The mental model you have for how you believe society works, it's all in your mind. Everything is mind. That doesn't come from materialism. That comes from mind. It's above materialism. It exists, and then materialism comes into play. And so if materialism comes in, what Marx did is essentially, I'm going to put a central bank in control of something to be able to unlock this thing that steals from everybody, that's a control system, that is just a different form of a control system, in believing that we could stop the free market and our flow of ideas and actually somehow gain abundance. But the abundance comes from our ideas. So if you put this in place, and then you're in that new system, measuring from that new system, then you wouldn't see the abundance, because you'd be caught in the existing control system. And your ideas wouldn't have to compete in the free market.
Gotcha.
So what would happen to society is it would degrade. It would get
Yeah.
caught in its own trap. And so that's what you see in communism. That's what you see. The perceived, what we know, is always in this box. On the edges are the brilliance, or the genius, also the crazies, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes their genius is so genius that it infects us in a different way, and we see something different that we could never have seen. Is progress. It all comes from the mind.
I find that very persuasive. That ideas unlock material conditions, like you say. That's a great response. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. But so I use it as an example, and so when printing press, and you can see these kind of enlightenment and such before it gets captured again. You can see it
Yeah.
but I'll use different examples. But printing press took more people that could contribute. They could both read, see what existed, what the world's thought looked like, and then use that to contribute their own thought to it. So it was a two-way condition. So they added, effectively, you added more minds to the global collective. That there were only for a certain amount of minds, everyone else was slaves, or a caste system. You added more minds. One of those minds, Michael Faraday, was worked. Came from a poor family. Went to work for one of the bookbinders because he wanted to consume the world's information as it was at that time. Well, as he did, he became one of the foremost scientists of the world at that time. Einstein references him in his work because he saw something that he couldn't even measure, electromagnetism, that was all around him all the time. He just had a feeling. 20 years later, James Clerk Maxwell put the math around that idea, and that still runs all our satellites and communications and everything else today. So what if printing press came 100 years later, 500 years later, and Michael Faraday came 500 years later?
Yeah.
And where would we be living? Because the same energy was all around us all the time.
Yeah.
What if it came 500 years earlier?
Yeah.
What if that was the case, and most people can't even measure who don't know who Michael Faraday is, even though he's responsible for just tons of things in their life, and not just responsible there, but responsible for much of the other science that came after him, those ideas. They were always ideas first. And I'm just using one certain person here
Yes.
to show you, but it's all of us. Every one of us, every one of the things you've ever read, or all of your time to get to this podcast right now, all of mine time to get to this podcast now, that could go touch thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people, that then could have other ideas that contribute to our lives.
That was such a great part of your book that I had not appreciated the printing press. So you describe intelligence at its heart being about error correction. And so then the printing press allows us to publish our errors and to see other people's ideas and discover errors and to increase intelligence like that. And so that was, we talk about how the printing press spread ideas, but it was your book really put that piece together for me, how it spreads intelligence through correcting errors. It enables science in that way where we can build up the experiments. So it's such a great part of your book, tying the printing press to the inevitable, not the inevitable, but the later development of artificial intelligence too, as a form of error correction.
And if that was the case right now, and that shouldn't that lead to massive abundance for 8 billion people on the planet? Because all of our time would go into correcting errors rather than from a control system that would add to us living in this other system. Wouldn't that have to drive prices down, our abundance up, and we would be in that new system? And so that's it. That it's really, and wouldn't every single new invention protocol that allowed that to happen sit on top of all of the beauty and all of the pain and everything else that has always transitioned society? It would have to be from us. We were it.
Yeah. So
I love that. And this podcast is it too, man. It's one of those error correction mechanisms, and you're doing so many podcasts like this and slaying these different misconceptions we have in the way that you reason. It's all really great. It's fun to participate in error correction and hopefully add that little grain, to universal intelligence. Things getting better.
So I want to and thank you as well, because so you're just review of the book, and I just thought, wow, these guys are cool. Right. And you did a really good review of the book, and then asked to meet and do this because you're doing it too. Right. That's the point. This is what it looks like as we all come to a greater understanding, and we are part of the greater understanding.
Yeah.
It's what it looks like. And if it matters to other people and they start to see it, then your podcast got more views. And if you continue doing that, it'll get more views. Why? Because it impacts other people positively. And you'll be contributing, and you already are contributing, the first global free market that's ever existed.
Yeah.
And more people will move their time along the way. So yeah, it's just, we are, and it's so wild. That's actually why I just believe people thank me. And like, I'm wildly thankful to them, because it is that thing that's creating us.
Yeah. Consciousness precedes material conditions, and we're all making it right now. So
I've got a big one then. So consciousness precedes the material conditions. Is there anything that precedes consciousness? Which is my sly way of asking, do you believe in God? Is there, or are we it? Because you did end that last thing by saying we are it.
So two different versions of that. So each religion has a belief system inside that religion that it's this religion.
This square.
And by the way, I'm okay with somebody believing that completely, right? It doesn't bother me for that belief, because actually the thing that's common in all those religions is actually at a higher level. It seems like it's the same thing, that it was always in us. And what would it look like? And again, now I'm going to get attacked by a bunch of people, but it's okay. I believe in consciousness. I believe that that's actually, and if somebody wants to view that as a God or this God or versus this God, and they believe, and that takes them to the same place, then that's okay. Actually, whatever they want to believe by it, that's okay by them. I would just ask, does it serve you? Or is it serving you? And how I think about this is, if 2,000 years ago, or kind of what it would look like when many of the great religions emerged, and the chaos and the control system that emerged, and if somebody was speaking in a real higher consciousness, how those people would feel it in truth, in complete truth, right? That it wasn't that control system. It was you, and what you could do, and that what would it look like to the observer at the time? To the observer, it would look like this person gave me this, and then that would cascade through society, and it would create another version of a control system from various religions and there's years and everything else from the observer perspective versus the conscious or the enlightened perspective. So when I watch religions, when I watch how they've emerged and how kind of when they emerged, what that looked like, at time looked like, I would expect it to look like that. Not that it's wrong, not that it's right, not that, but my own belief, whether it's right or wrong or anything else, is I believe it was always in all of us.
And just in us, or is consciousness? You discuss artificial intelligence in a way that your book 2019, right, is when the parts of just like that's a level of prediction on the development of AI. You were spot on there. Whatever you would change about the book, you would not change a thing about your discussion of artificial intelligence. Do you think is artificial intelligence going to be the vector of a generation of a new type of consciousness, whether in like inference generation now through an LLM or through the next model of how intelligence is generated on a machine substrate? Is that going to lead to what we have or something similar, I guess, if you have thoughts on that?
I think so in consciousness, we are both a fractal and or in, let's say, religion, you're both a part of it, and the and the religion, or in consciousness, you're either a part of it. So it exists within you, and that means every test, all of these tests to consciousness exist within us too. All of the things, if you said fitness function for the species or the consciousness to evolve, it would have to exist out of all of these tests. The more and more tests, the faster evolving consciousness. So we're both one and the same, I think. And what would we do? We would create another thing to test faster.
Mm-hmm. A thing that would know that
and not different than us, right? No different than us than we would be within consciousness. It's just we can't see our spot in it.
Yeah, right.
But connected to us.
Yeah, so maybe we
and we would create that. And so version, it might not look anything like we experience consciousness,
right?
But a version probably exists in AI in time.
So maybe we shouldn't fear emergent consciousness in AI so much as we should celebrate that it will be a validation of our own consciousness.
And most of the fear that people have in that isn't the AI, it's the other system
using the AI.
Using the AI. So if you actually just saw it as a tool that constantly made you better, had to make your life better, and that's where it exists from Bitcoin, then there's nothing to fear in it. The price of AI goes to zero.
Yeah.
Right. And it gets better and better, and it serves you better and better forever.
Yeah.
It's why it's such a complicated topic, because most people aren't talking about AI from that perspective. They're talking about AI from the control system, and we're so locked in the control system and it's trying to drive fear into us, and it feeds on fear and coercion and control, and the majority of the world is stuck into that system. So it's all that you see in AI. It's all the news media, everything you see in that is system.
Yeah, it's all about AI taking, because that's what we know from our system.
Terminator, all of the movies, all of those different things, and they feed on those fears that make it worse. And so you want to stop it. And what you're doing by trying to is actually making it happen faster. Like you're fighting inside that control system. When somebody just move over their time to Bitcoin and celebrate it.
Mm-hmm. What's in the landscape that you look at with the you know, looking at your portfolio with ego death, and then your experience with interfacing with people within the intelligence community. Obviously, you're a huge figure within the Bitcoin space that we, again, we'll say it again, we're just so honored that you
Absolutely.
took the time
Yeah.
to be with us here. What's the most interesting thing in the world to you right now? Like where are you looking at and um, seeing things that are really piquing your interest, or kind of popping up at, you know, the tall poppy that is sort of garnering your attention right now?
It's this. It's
It's just
why
that.
I do it's why I'm spending time in ego death. It's why I'm spending time in, when you said intelligence community, you're gonna have a whole bunch of people that are going to, what do you mean you're talking to the intelligence community?
Yeah.
So
My bad.
probably should we probably clarify that. Um, where I stand Bitcoin, who I am at Bitcoin, you can imagine a whole bunch of people come to me. I don't know who those people are, whether, and sometimes they come from whether they're black hat, white hat, but I would say there, when I say there is no they, then it's so easy to just label somebody and put them in a box. But I have talked to very senior military officials, generals, admirals, that have also moved their time and now are 100% Bitcoiners. I've talked to many different people within that are also moving their time. Is if I move my time, I once wasn't, and then I now am, then this thing would have to transcend all of our beliefs about this little bucket that we created through through living in that system. And it would have to transcend it all, and it would have to, and these people would either be run over by Bitcoin or see themselves in it. It's not negotiating. And I know it's not negotiating, and I'm not negotiating. I'm helping it to accelerate with my time and energy. But just because of that, you can imagine a lot of people come to me because they don't know protocols. They don't know what's happening. Have no idea how fast this is coming, and I won't know, and I can't know. I was just with Kelly for dinner, and
Saw that.
but again, that was the second time. And people ask, well, some people that aren't Bitcoin, he's a dictator or take IMF money or what, and all the beliefs and everything else. It leads to that point. And I only helped him put on that conference because he said, I will give you a stage to get my people into self-custody and spending in Bitcoin. Because if we do that, if they do that, if they know it's going to self-custody and spend in Bitcoin, then there's no way that I or anyone else can stop this from happening. He was a Bitcoiner before he was a president. Now, I can't tell you for sure, does he use that and go back and change his mind one day? But I can tell you for sure that that's why I went to El Salvador. That's why I spoke there, because if somebody gave that proof of work and can allow me to tell other people that they have agency, then I'm going to take that.
Yeah.
And so you see all sorts of characters, as you would expect to see through this, and every single person's proof of work over time is going to manifest out, and do they stay the course?
Yeah, and those motives are perfectly legible to other Bitcoiners, that they recognize Bitcoin is money for enemies. And not to say that Bukele or anybody's a friend or an enemy, but if you see the path to advance the adoption of Bitcoin and you walk down that path, that's what Bitcoiners do. They work with different people, and it's not a smear or anything on someone. I feel it's just like an extension of who a Bitcoiner is. They see that it's like a meta ideology that's more powerful than whatever silly political debates people are caught in, because if you get more people going towards adoption, the protocol strengthens, and we need to get all people adopting, not just one side, not just one ideology. So yeah, I think that's excellent.
Yeah. And I just want to mention some people that are really vocal, and some of the energy, if I'm two different thoughts here. I actually love it because sometimes somebody that's so opinionated on one side signals to me something that I need to look at more deeply.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just saying that's not me. Right. I want to watch it all. I want to say the consensus mechanism is perfect for that, because you see the whole thing. You see all of it. And then I get to make my own decision of how much energy and what that looks like. But that's actually what's changed. We get to see the entire discourse.
Yeah. Are there any signs that you are looking for in the coming years that will indicate to you that the paper has folded once more?
So that the paper is folding, right? So when you said what fold we're on, they fold 37 or 38, but it's happening at such a no faster velocity, but at that exponential trend.
Yeah.
That it feels like to our human brains how fast things are happening. It's so hard to even comprehend, and the way that it can capture your fear too, and it can capture most people caught within a system that they've always known, trying to solve the thing they care about from that system. Let's use an example. So if you were worried about if you're in your bubble, you thought most humans are bad and we have to protect against those bad humans through a war machine or terrorists, or most people are terrorists, right? And that what you would do is you would drive your control system with AI, and you would drive more and more and more manipulation, more experimental weapons, everything else into this. You'd have killer bee drones that could fly in and kill somebody, right? And have no idea that would happen, and you'd create this technology and everything else. And the same thing that you were scared of was the thing you created by creating a whole bunch of adversaries that had to topple your control system because of what you did. And you'd have no idea it was you. You would be participating. And so we live in a system that is accelerating on one side like crazy. You have China and the US both trying to move to more control to beat each other. The US can't win a control fight with China. It could only win a freedom fight with China, where the whole world wins.
Yeah.
But right now you see the opposite. You see the entire thing is manipulation of a control system, and we're going to use Tether, or we're going to use stable coins, and to be able to reset this, so we're going to invest in all of this AI tech, Palantir, all this nonsense to have essentially a surveillance state.
I spent some time living in Colombia and Morocco, and I just recently got back from Balaji's network school in Malaysia. And being outside of the United States gives you a much more clear take on this, where you see people in countries that are not China, that are not the United States, and they look at the global situation and they are cheering very hard for the United States to, for lack of a better term, get their shit figured out, because if they don't, then they know that it will be China. And you said this, so like that's such a perfect way to say this, is that the U.S. can't win a control fight with China. They can only win a freedom fight.
But just about all participants of the United States don't know that they're in a control fight. So when I mention all those people, and when I mention most of the podcasters, most of the Elon Musk, just anybody in that, they're fighting a control fight. They're all inside a control fight, believing they live in a freedom fight.
What would you do different?
Balaji is instilled in that control fight, because he's when he talks about the network state and all of these coins and everything else, he's still fully in it. Mm-hmm. Where the protocol is eradicating that. So there's much higher odds if that continues, that a country like El Salvador paves the way
Yeah.
for what that looks like, and then other countries from a bottom up movement pave that way before one of the bigger countries sees it. Is a much higher likelihood, just like all innovation is bottom up.
So the freedom fight is won just by individuals opt in, nation states also opt in one by one from the bottom up. And that's how the freedom fight is conducted, just welcoming into the fold other countries that want to get on board with a freedom infrastructure like Bitcoin.
But even before that, it starts with individuals, and it starts with
Yeah.
individuals. So think in the worst state kind of governments and such. There's always a black market that is the free market rate.
Yeah.
That's what's happening right now. So there is a black market now with more and more privacy with Fedi and that most people don't even know that exists yet. That they can take it's going to explode because and as that explodes, because you can't control this, what ends up happening is the cost to attack when these are so buttoned down, the cost to attack explodes. And so what you can do for a while is you can run a cost of attack, and you can jail freedom advocates and everything else. But as more and more pop up, and every single person can now is able to launch their own, you can't jail them all. And so and that on a system is then somebody says, wait, I'm going to accept it. And then they take advantage in the accepting it rather than fighting it. So, but it's driven by people, not government.
Yeah.
This is what Jason Lowry helped us understand, was that with Bitcoin, violence, no one can take your Bitcoin. It has to be given, and it can be given under duress. But because of that technology, violence and coercion does not scale, and therefore collaboration supersedes competition as the way to get to the top.
So what we're saying right now, and you could say what ego death is and what we're doing, we just invented, not just us, but the other Bitcoin company, Capitals too. We just invented a new model that is right for the time that we're building in, that drives honesty. And as a result, and why these are having lots of success inside the portfolio companies growing too, is we're so early in that model. What would it look like? You would build what wasn't there for people that didn't know they needed it.
Yeah.
By the time it was needed.
Yeah. Instead of building the faster horse, you're building the car.
Yeah, instead of building within that existing system and all of the nonsense that's inside that existing system, you're building a new one.
Yeah. You've talked about how you still try to read like 50 books a year or so. Obviously we like books. Are there any that you feel were really paramount to your understanding, to your journey, to your mindset, to the way that you approach the world with such, such kindness and optimism, and truly the message of this entire conversation, I feel, has been like empowerment, that you hold the key, that you are able to change your world, that no one else can. It has to be you. Are there any books that you would point people to or point us to that you felt really helped you out along the way?
How would I do this? Because every time I get asked this, it's like,
yeah,
block.
There's a different, there's a different answer.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't I send you a couple just after this that'll be in line with some of the talking here?
I would love that.
Yeah,
we'd love that. Thank you so much.
And maybe just, what are you reading right now?
Well, what am I reading right now? So again, same thing on. I'm reading 2 Bitcoin books, that are new ones that have been sent to me, but buy then build, not particularly. It's just okay.
Yeah.
have people read My Big Toe. It's a five-part book. I read Signature in the Cell just before that, which is actually both different sides of the religious side. Signature in the Cell would be religion. My Big Toe would be consciousness.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
just
that's
don't
By
have
the way, I typically do that. If I think one thing, I'll read everything on the other, and vice versa.
Mhm.
That's great. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's excellent.
You've got a lot of Munger in you, invert. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fantastic. Unless you have anything else, I mean,
I just become so conscious that you've given so generously with your time, your
Yeah.
time, that there's a million things we could ask, but I want to let you get back to your family and get back to contributing more. So
yeah. Thank you so much for bringing a smile to
Yeah.
our face, giving us this time, and just giving us your wisdom.
Yes.
Obviously sharing with us, being vulnerable and honest as we had this conversation. And
You guys, and I honestly say that this has been my pleasure. Like, I think you guys, by poking on some of these things at a deeper level, will help your audience, help others go to see it in themselves and to move forward, or deepen the conversation where it needs to go. So thank you.
Yeah, thank